Before we get started, I have to tell you about a brand new investment opportunity. On-Call Capital is pleased to present you with a unique opportunity to partner in the acquisition of the Palazzo Apartments, a 92-unit community situated in the heart of San Antonio and less than 200 yards from San Antonio Medical Center. This is our second offering from QC Capital, and we expect this off-market opportunity to fill up very quickly. This is a 506c offering, meaning that you need to be an accredited investor to invest. If you've been looking to build your passive income streams, this is a fantastic opportunity to get started. For more information, reach out to me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com or use the link in the show notes to schedule a call with me. Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and my guest today takes part in a lot of stitching, but I'm not just talking about sutures here. Julia Camp is a CRNA in the Navy who has a couple of Plan Bs already underway, but her most recent endeavor is a business in creating and selling scrub caps and bags. Welcome to the show today, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me, Bobby.
So let's just start at the beginning here. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and, your career up to this point?
Sure. So I've been a CRNA for the past 2 years and then a nurse for total of 9 years. All of that with the U.S. Navy. Prior to my career in the Navy, I was actually a CPA and worked in finance and accounting for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've done a couple of things in life. And yeah, so that's what, as I was finishing my CRNA school, I started to kind of think about, all right, what am I going to do with all of this time that I am hopefully going to have now that I'm not focused solely on studying and prepping for my boards.
Yeah. So, I know my wife is a crafter. I'm not much of a crafter. But obviously you've had some history with that. How did you get started with crafting in general and then sewing, and how has that passion grown over time?
So honestly, I hadn't sewed I don't even know if I want to say how many years. I started sewing probably when I was 10 and then took a hiatus probably shortly thereafter. But I've always enjoyed making things. I like working with my hands, and I often will look at something and say, oh, I could make that. And sometimes I follow through, sometimes I don't, but I just have always enjoyed working with my hands. Mm-hmm. And when I was finishing, or when I was doing all of my clinical rotations, I would see people's scrub caps and I'd think those are so cool. And I was very much in the mindset of like, I'm a student, I need to wear the bouffant, and I'm not, I don't get the fun scrub caps until I finish. And so I was really kind of looking forward to like, all right, I'm going to be done soon. I'm going to purchase some scrub caps. And then I thought I could make these. And, this was probably January of 2020 when I decided that that's what I was going to do. I was going to get myself a sewing machine and I was going to start making scrub caps. I didn't end up purchasing it until April of 2020. And so finding a sewing machine was challenging at that point. I was not the only one who had all of a sudden decided that they were going to take up sewing. But I did manage to find something, and so I was able to get started. And initially it was, just making caps for myself, figuring it out again, figuring out how to sew and make it work. And the one thing that was fantastic about having the pandemic go on is that there were tons of YouTube videos on how to make scrub caps, and that had not really been as prevalent prior to 2020. Most of those videos really came out during the beginning of the pandemic. So that was really helpful for me. Mm-hmm. And then, you start going to the fabric store and you see all the fantastic options. And I just think, well, there's too many here that I want to make. And so maybe I should start selling these. And so, it took me a little bit longer to kind of feel comfortable enough with my making them and feeling like I was producing a quality product. But I ended up selling probably about 5 months after I'd started making them.
Okay. Well, and that was what I was going to say. It's one thing to enjoy sewing and to maybe make some scrub caps for coworkers, but it's another to really start your own business. So, and I was going to ask, how do you actually decide on the fabrics and designs and the like? And you kind of went over that where you're using some designs from YouTube for some of these things. But also you've got bags on your website as well.
Yes. Yes. So it's grown. So things definitely grew. Initially, it was just scrub caps. I really didn't have any intention of doing anything more than scrub caps. And the fabric, there is, it's a rabbit hole, and it's a burn. I mean, it's huge. So there are all sorts of custom fabric groups. You can find all sorts on Facebook. And so I just started, there were some people that I started following, and you just start going deeper and deeper into those little caves. Yeah. And so that was one area for fabric. And then there's getting into sort of the quilting fabric, and it's just, there's an amazing selection of fabric. So I choose things that I like, because then if for some reason the scrub cap doesn't sell, I can use that fabric for something else. So I tend to make things as they're ordered. Just because that means that, again, I can use that fabric for something else if the cap doesn't, if it's not a popular style. Mm-hmm. And so as I was making, I was continuing to sort of watch some of these people on YouTube, and they were moving into different areas. And there was one person in particular who, initially I was watching her videos on making tote bags. And again, I was like, oh, I could do that. And so then it just kind of grew from there. And my, style of bags that I produce or that I make at this point has grown. The ones right now that I'm selling are a little bit more limited, and I do plan on expanding that and bringing more on. But I like to kind of start small, sort of put my foot in the water and test it. It may not always be the best strategy, but that way I start with one, something small, and then gradually go up, because you can, the bags that can be made can be pretty pricey. And it seems like, let's start with something that's easy for someone to purchase, as opposed to, a $200 bag that they don't necessarily know who I am, what my quality is, etc.
Sure. Well, and I guess, the feedback that you get is going to matter too from your customers, absolutely, what they're looking for and what you're trying to produce for them. So, when it comes to starting this business, you mentioned having to purchase a sewing machine. I don't have any concept of how much a sewing machine costs. But what are the startup costs that you have? It doesn't seem like it would be a tremendous amount to get going.
No, it's not. It isn't. Sewing machines, you can, depending on, how fancy, you can spend a couple of $100, maybe $200, and you can spend like $10,000.
Holy smokes.
There is an enormous range. and a lot of it is just, it's brand quality. I mean, there definitely are some quality differences, the materials that the machines are made out of, but I started off with more of the $200 sewing machine, and then added a different machine, a serger, to which allows me to finish my edges much more nicely. And that was probably another $200. You don't have to do that, but again, I was trying to produce a product that I felt like was a good quality product. And so I wanted to make sure that, the edges weren't going to fray, that it's going to last for someone. Mm-hmm. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and do that. And then it's really just fabric and thread. So, you could, in theory, you could start with just that first sewing machine, get some fabric and thread and go from there. Yeah. And then a little bit of elastic. There's a couple of other things, but
a couple of other things. Much.
Yeah. There's always like, oh yeah, there's this, but yeah, it's the startup costs aren't bad.
Okay. Well, and then, you've got your own Etsy store.
Yes.
What was that process like? How did you decide on this particular platform? And can you walk me through the process of getting started there?
So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of videos of people talking about Etsy, their experiences talking about Etsy, and sort of how to go about starting a shop on Etsy. The actual process of starting a shop on Etsy is extremely easy. But then you have to get people to come to your shop. And yes, Etsy provides a platform to potentially highlight your products. The search terms can be there, but you have to have search terms that people are actually going to be searching on in order to, to get your product. So I watched a lot, found some people who I felt like were saying some good things, and watched a lot of what they had to say. And then just kind of got started. I started at the end of September. And so kind of Halloween time was sort of my first, that a lot of my fabrics were focused on that. I love Halloween. So that was awesome. And so that, it was during a time where I sort of felt like, oh, people want a Halloween scrub cap, or then, people want like a holiday scrub cap. So it was actually a nice time to start, because you could provide some fun, I could provide some fun scrub caps. But it was, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how, if it was going to work or not, but I enjoyed doing it. So it was like, all right, let's just give it a try and see what happens and see if we can make this work.
Well, and I think that's a big part of anything that you go into, is that you want to make sure that you're enjoying it. Yeah. And, that it's not so much of a burden that, you wake up and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this today. And it's stressing you out. So, kudos to you for following something that you enjoy and making that into something that's at least a profitable endeavor. So, now you did touch on something there. You mentioned kind of the marketing aspect. How have you approached, marketing your Etsy store?
So marketing is the area, if I could farm that out, I absolutely would. It is not my area of expertise at all. And there are times where I do sort of say like, okay, I need a break. And so I will not do any marketing. I do, Instagram, I will post some things, and I really rely on Etsy. And so in order to rely on Etsy, you really have to be active in your shop by sort of constantly adding new products. And so they can see that you are actively engaged in your shop. And when I stop doing that, then I'll sort of see a decrease in what Etsy's providing. So in some ways it's kind of nice because I can kind of attempt to control sort of how much comes in, because I do have other things going on that it's, there are times where I kind of have to step away from the shop, but then, if I start being active in my shop, doing things on Instagram, sometimes word of mouth, then I can start to bring people back to the shop. I really want to keep it so that it's something that I enjoy doing, which means making sure that it's manageable, and that's a balancing act. And it's, sometimes that's easier than others.
Sure. I know the feeling because I'm kind of a one-man show with my business, and that's been my goal all along, is to keep it a manageable business. I don't want to have, a deal every 2 weeks that I'm trying to pitch to people or anything like that. Cause I don't, first off, I don't want to pitch anything. I'm there with you in the marketing aspect. And I don't like doing that. I just want to help people and provide a good service. So, you do walk a fine line there, because when you start to grow, when you start to get recognition, then you have more demands on you. Then sometimes you can find time in the day. So
right. Absolutely.
But what's been the most challenging part of this whole thing so far? Has it been that balancing act, or has it been something else?
So sometimes there's kind of been, it sort of fluctuates. So sometimes it is that balancing act. Sometimes it is. So I actually was just noticing this morning that some of the fabric companies are starting to kind of show what their holiday fabrics are going to be. It's March. I don't want to think about Christmas. And they're not for sale yet. So it's not that I have to go and purchase them, but they're trying to, get interest on the fabrics that are coming. Yeah. It's funny, if it's Halloween, yes, I'll be excited about it year round. So that one I have no trouble, but anything other than Halloween, I sort of feel like, no, it's not time yet. So sometimes it is that, because I do really like to have fabrics that I like, and not just like, oh, this is okay, like I'll go ahead and buy it. No, because that, to me, that one, maybe it would sell, but maybe it won't. So I really like to get the fabrics that speak to me, and that can be challenging when, if I'm buying my Christmas fabrics around Halloween, I'm late. Like, that's way too late.
Yeah.
And it really is more of a June, July thing. And it's, Christmas in July has definitely become a bigger thing, and more people are talking about it. But it's like, no, we haven't had Halloween yet. We need Halloween. I don't know what it is that I love about Halloween so much, but I do. I love it.
Well, my family, I'm an October birthday, and my 3 kids are all October birthdays. So we definitely love Halloween as well. But,
yes,
but I wanted to get back to, something I wanted to ask you about, the considerations that people need to take into account when they're thinking about starting their own Etsy store, where they're producing products and, doing something like you're doing.
So I really focus on trying to make that product be as good of quality as I possibly can. One of the people who I follow had some ideas on, email messages that go out when an order is received. I send out an email message, and to try and be very, very open with my communication with that person. So if there's any issues, they come to me, and that they don't just leave a bad review on Etsy. Also, and this is becoming a bigger thing, but asking for a 5-star review, letting that person know this is what I'm looking for, so that they are aware. Because sometimes if you don't ask, you're not going to get, because the person just, it's not a big deal, whatever. So asking for those things, obviously, if they don't wish to, that's totally fine. Or if they don't feel like it's 5-star, then that's ultimately up to them. But making sure that my customer service is as good as I can get it. so that the person, if there are any issues, we can resolve it between us and hopefully keep that customer happy, as opposed to having them leave a bad review or, send some message off to Etsy complaining or something. So I think just for me, that was, again, focusing on the quality of the product so that people are happy with it. Trying to give as much information as I can in that listing, so that, people are able to get a sense of what the product really looks like. I know I spent a lot of time on Etsy looking at listings of scrub caps, and I sort of felt like I want to see more pictures. I want to see what the scrub cap looks like all the way around on the inside, so I have a sense of what it is I'm purchasing. And so trying to do my photography in such a way that it gives that information. I had always been told that the description nobody reads, that it's really your images that are gonna, so whatever information is key has to be in that images, and whether you're adding text to that or just, making sure that your photographs convey, you want to make sure that everything the person really needs to know is in those images.
Well, and I'll say too, like after visiting your website, I mean, your images are clean and you see exactly what you're getting. So that, that's a really neat thing, because you can go on to other pages and they don't take good photos or whatever. And so you don't get the best idea of what you're actually purchasing. So yeah, I love that you touched on that point. So, overall, what's been the benefit for you from doing all of this? Obviously you enjoy sewing, but what's been the other, some of the other benefits that you've come across?
So it actually was fantastic during the pandemic. It gave me something to focus on. So it was really nice when things were shutting down and I wasn't able to get out and do things. I happened to move during 2020. And so all of a sudden I am not able to really go out and do anything. And I'm in this new place where I know a handful of people who I work with, but that's about it. And so it gave me something to focus on and do, which was really great. And I kind of, had this sort of online community of people, other crafters and sewists who I interact with. And so that was nice that, that can go with me wherever I go, which is fantastic. So, and then it also, opened up this new path into, learning new skills of the making bags. And that is something that I really am wanting and planning on developing more. And so it's, giving me new opportunities.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, in the intro, we also mentioned that you have some other plan Bs going on.
Yes.
Can you go into that a little bit?
So real estate is, I have a couple of rental units. Anytime I move, I pretty much purchase my place with the intention of renting it out. It doesn't always work out that way, but it has a couple of times. And so I have some rental units that I manage, and I'm hoping to add to that and possibly, do a little more in real estate, but we'll see. So far, I've been very lucky. I have not had any horror stories. And I know that is not always the rule.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard of, active military, when they move from place to place, I've heard of that idea of, hey, we'll just hold on to the house, that you had and rent it out. And that was advice that, my grandfather passed on to my dad. Is, hey, you know what? Don't sell that house. If you're moving, just hold on to it and rent it out. And so that's kind of how my father built, his own portfolio of, 4 homes at one time, or condos and the like. So, yeah, is that pretty much the strategy you're using? Is like, hey, I'll go and I'll live somewhere and then I'll do something with it after?
Yes, absolutely. The military has made a lot of accidental landlords. So people who just don't sell because the market is not good when they need to move. So, and that can be good and bad, because sometimes those people have no idea what they're getting into,
Mm-hmm.
but they just sort of feel like, okay, I can do this. Now, some of those people make it work, and it's a great thing. Sometimes it just is a mess, but I went into it thinking this is what I want to do. So I was not an accidental landlord. I'd had experience renting out a place previously, and I decided that this is, sometimes it was just, I like this place. I don't want to let it go. So I may come back. So why not? But my strategy is definitely to, wherever I move to, I will purchase the place with the intention of renting it out. And then, as I mentioned, my current place, I don't think I'll end up renting it out, just because I don't think it'll be a good financial move. And so sometimes that doesn't pan out, but that's sort of the plan when I move to each new location.
Yeah. Well, and at least you can benefit from the appreciation of the property and
right.
And use that for your next home. Have you utilized any of the special loan programs that are offered through the military?
I did have one property was a VA loan. Unfortunately, I purchased that property right before they changed the rules on limits. So I think that I now have to sort of pay that one off before I can take advantage of some of the new rules. But that I did use a VA loan for one property.
Okay.
The duplex.
Cool. And yeah, like you mentioned, you lived in one side of that for a little while, and yes. That's kind of been your strategy, is you like living in the place that you're going to eventually rent out, so that you get that idea of, any maintenance issues or anything going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It kind of lets me know that this is going to be a good place, or this needs to be fixed. And it allows me to take advantage of some of the tax benefits that are available to military once we move away. If you've lived there for 2 years, we have up to actually 15 years, as long as we're still active duty, to take advantage of some of the tax credits when you sell that property. So we do get an extended period to be able to sell that and still get that tax credit, the tax break.
That's really incredible. I had no idea about that one, because it's 5 years for folks who aren't in the military. So 15 years is tremendous.
It is definitely a longer period. Again, you have to have been on active duty that whole time. So it's not, once you're off active duty, then your window kind of begins to close. But that is, that's one of the nice things. Okay.
Well, as we close up here, is there anything that we've missed? Anything you'd like to mention or talk about? Or
I don't think so. I would encourage everyone to figure out their plan Bs and explore them, because I think they're a lot of fun. And I enjoy my plan Bs. I enjoy hearing about everyone else's plan Bs, and being a CRNA is great. But there's lots of other fun things out there in life.
For sure. Well, I'm sure that there are people out there who have plenty of questions for you that we didn't get to cover today. How can folks get a hold of you and learn more about you and your products?
So Etsy shop is probably the easiest way. Julia C Creations is my Etsy shop. So all one word on that. And so doing a search in Etsy for that would bring my shop up, and I can be contacted through there. I do custom orders. And so people can always, if they see something that isn't quite what they want, please feel free to reach out and say, hey, can you do X? And I'll see what we can do.
Very cool. Well, Julia, I want to thank you for being on the show today and spending so much time with us. I've really appreciated getting to know more about you and your business today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This conversation was jam-packed with useful information. First off, Julia has a ton of different fabrics, but she only uses a few designs on her site. She wants to focus on creating a quality product, which takes repetition and comfort. Sure, she can add new wrinkles and do custom projects, but she knows what she's good at, and she chooses to focus on quality over quantity. Now, next, I love how she mentioned using YouTube as a resource. Between that and podcasts, you can find just about anything you want to help you in getting started. The learning component is critical, and now it's easier and cheaper than it's ever been to acquire that knowledge. And lastly, she mentioned asking for 5-star reviews. Too often in business, we feel guilty or pushy when we make an ask. I know I've fallen victim to this mindset, but Julia's point that you won't get what you don't ask for makes complete sense. I have around 16,000 downloads for this podcast, but only 12 Apple Podcast reviews. We've got to pump those numbers up, guys. Those are rookie numbers. And since we're talking about calls to action, have you checked out our most recent offering? The Palazzo Apartments are a 92-unit B-plus apartment complex that's located in the heart of San Antonio, Texas. If you've been thinking about starting your own positive cash flow journey, then this is a great way to begin. For investment details, you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or at my website, www.oncallinvestments.com. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, stay safe and take care of each other out there. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.